The gunshot that killed Thomas Evans still echoed in Fiona's nightmares, 6 months after they buried him in the hard Colorado ground near Fort Garland. She stood on the porch of the ranch house that morning in late April 1878, watching the sun climb over the San Luis Mountains, her hands wrapped around a tin cup of coffee gone cold. The ranch stretched out before her, 200 acres of stubborn land that demanded more than one woman could give. The cattle needed tending, fences needed mending, and the spring branding should have started 2 weeks ago. Thomas had always handled the heavy work, and their 3 hired hands had drifted off to other ranches within a month of his death, probably sensing the ranch was circling the drain. At 32, Fiona had never imagined she would be alone. She and Thomas had married when she was 19, full of dreams about building something lasting in this wild territory. They had worked side by side for 13 years, their hands equally calloused, their hearts beating in rhythm with the seasons. Then a dispute over water rights with a neighboring rancher had turned ugly, and Thomas had taken a bullet meant to intimidate, but that found his heart instead. The sheriff had called it manslaughter, given the shooter 5 years, and Fiona was left with a ranch she could not run alone, and a hole in her chest that never seemed to close. She heard the horse before she saw it, the steady clop of hooves on the packed dirt road that led to her property. Fiona set down her cup and shielded her eyes against the morning glare. A lone rider approached, sitting tall in the saddle, leading a pack horse behind him. As he drew closer, she could make out his features. Young, probably early 20s, with dark hair that needed cutting and a lean frame that spoke of hard travel. He wore dusty clothes and a brown hat with a wide brim, and there was something careful in the way he rode, like a man accustomed to watching his surroundings. The rider pulled up at the edge of her yard and removed his hat, revealing a face that was sun-bronzed and honest, with clear gray eyes that met hers directly. "Madam, I heard in town you might be looking for help. Name's Quinlan Davis." Fiona studied him, her instinct for reading people honed by years of dealing with drifters and ranch hands of varying reliability. This one had manners, at least, and something about his direct gaze suggested he was not the type to run at the first sign of hard work. "You hear right. But I cannot pay much. Ranch has been struggling since my husband passed." "I heard about that too. I am sorry for your loss." Quinlan's expression held genuine sympathy, not the awkward pity she had grown to hate. "As for pay, I would work for room and board and whatever you can spare. I am more interested in honest work than getting rich." "Why?" The question came out sharper than she intended. "Young man like you could find better opportunities." Quinlan shifted in his saddle, choosing his words carefully. "I have been drifting since I was 16, working ranches from Texas to Montana. Good work mostly, but temporary. I am tired of moving, looking for a place to settle, prove myself. Your ranch, from what I saw riding in, has good bones, just needs hands to work it." Something in his earnestness made Fiona's decision easier than it should have been. Maybe it was desperation, or maybe it was the way he looked at her land with appreciation rather than pity. "Bunkhouse needs cleaning, has not been used in months. If you can handle cattle mending and do not mind long days, you have got yourself a job." A smile broke across Quinlan's face, transforming him from weathered to boyish in an instant. "Yes, madam, you will not regret this." "We will see about that," Fiona said, but she felt something loosen in her chest, the first easing of the constant pressure she had carried since Thomas died. "Put your horses in the barn. I will show you around after you settle in." She watched him ride toward the barn, his posture relaxed now, and wondered if she had just made the best or worst decision of her widowhood. Only time would tell, and time was something she had plenty of, stretched out long and empty like the Colorado plains. Within an hour, Quinlan had settled his horses and presented himself at the house, hat in hand. Fiona led him on a tour of the property, pointing out the challenges with a bluntness that would have discouraged a less determined man. The north fence was down in 3 places. The herd had scattered into the foothills and needed gathering. The windmill that pumped water to the stock tank had a broken gear. The list went on, each item another weight on her shoulders. Quinlan listened without interrupting, his eyes taking in every detail. When she finished, he simply nodded. "I will start with the fences, cannot do much else until the herd is contained. Should take me 3, maybe 4 days if the weather holds. You will need supplies. Wire, posts, tools are in the barn." Fiona paused, then added, "I will help. I am not much for sitting idle." "Did not figure you were, madam. Call me Fiona. Madam makes me feel ancient." That earned her another of those transforming smiles. "Fiona it is, and I go by Quinn mostly." They fell into a routine quickly, born of necessity and mutual respect. Quinn rose before dawn, and Fiona would find him already working when she came out with coffee and biscuits. They would work through the morning, break for a simple lunch, then continue until the light failed. Quinn proved himself capable and then some, handling tasks that would have taken Thomas twice as long. He had a way with animals too, calming spooked cattle with soft words and patient handling. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch, too tired for much conversation, watching the stars emerge over the mountains. Fiona found herself looking forward to these quiet moments, the companionable silence more soothing than words. Quinn never pried into her grief, never offered empty platitudes, just existed beside her as another living soul sharing the burden of the day. A week into his employment, they were working on the north fence when a sudden spring storm rolled down from the mountains, turning the sky black and unleashing sheets of cold rain. They ran for the line shack a quarter-mile away, a small shelter used during roundups, arriving soaked and shivering. Quinn got a fire going in the potbelly stove while Fiona found a couple of old blankets in a chest. "Should ease up in an hour or so," Quinn said, feeding kindling to the growing flames. "These spring storms blow through fast." Fiona wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, her wet hair dripping down her back. She watched Quinn work, noting the efficient grace of his movements, the way firelight played across his features. He was handsome, she realized with a start. She had been so focused on his usefulness as a worker that she had not really looked at him as a man. The thought brought a flush of shame. Thomas had only been gone 6 months. What kind of wife noticed another man so soon? "You are good at this," she said, needing to break the uncomfortable direction of her thoughts. "The ranch work. Where did you learn?" Quinn settled back on his heels, satisfied with the fire. "My father had a small spread in East Texas, nothing like this, just enough to scrape by. He taught me young," said a man who could not work with his hands was not much use in this world. "Your father sounds wise." "He was." Quinn's expression shadowed. "Died of fever when I was 15. My mother followed him 6 months later. Think she just gave up, could not see a reason to keep going without him." Fiona felt a pang of recognition. "I know that feeling. Some days getting out of bed seems pointless." Quinn looked at her directly, those gray eyes seeing more than she was comfortable with. "But you do it anyway." "That takes strength, or stubbornness." "Is there a difference?" The question made her smile, a real smile that felt strange on her face. "Maybe not." They talked more that afternoon, trapped by the storm, sharing pieces of their pasts in the flickering firelight. Fiona told him about meeting Thomas at a church social in Denver, how he had been so earnest in his courtship that she could not help but say yes. How they had bought this land with money saved from years of him working as a farrier and her as a seamstress. How they had built the ranch from nothing. Every fence post and barn bore a testament to their shared dreams. Quinn listened like he truly heard her, not just waiting for his turn to speak. When she finally fell silent, wrung out from the rare indulgence of speaking so much, he said quietly, "He was lucky to have you. That kind of partnership, it is rare." "I was the lucky one," Fiona corrected, "and now I am lost without him." "You are not lost. You are still here, still fighting for what you built together. That is not lost, that is loyal." The words hit her harder than she expected, and she had to turn away to hide the sudden tears. No one had put it that way before. Everyone in town looked at her with pity, treating her like a tragic figure rather than a woman trying to honor her husband's memory by saving his ranch. Quinn saw her differently, and that perception shifted something inside her. When the storm passed and they rode back to the ranch house, Fiona felt lighter despite her wet clothes and tired muscles. She had forgotten what it was like to be seen, truly seen by another person. The weeks rolled into months. Spring became summer, and the ranch began to show signs of recovery. Quinn worked with relentless energy, and his enthusiasm proved contagious. Fiona found herself rising earlier, working later, pushing through the grief that had paralyzed her for so long. They gathered the scattered herd, completed the branding, repaired all the fences, and even found time to plant a vegetable garden behind the house. The town of Fort Garland noticed the changes. When Fiona rode in for supplies in early June, several shopkeepers commented on how well the ranch was doing, how good she looked. Martha Sullivan, who ran the general store, was more direct. "That young man you hired has certainly proven himself," Martha said while measuring out flour. "Whole town was worried about you, Fiona. Glad to see you have got help." "Quinn has been a blessing," Fiona admitted. "Could not manage without him." Martha gave her a knowing look. "He is a fine figure of a man and clearly devoted to you and the ranch." "It is not like that," Fiona said quickly, heat rising to her cheeks. "He is an employee, nothing more, if you say so, dear." Martha's tone suggested she thought otherwise, and Fiona left the store feeling unsettled. Was it so obvious? She had been trying not to examine her feelings too closely, afraid of what she might find. Quinn was 12 years younger, full of life and potential. She was a widow still in mourning, worn down by hard work and harder grief. It would be inappropriate, possibly even scandalous, to feel anything for him beyond gratitude for his labor. But her heart, stubborn thing that it was, had not been consulting her head. She noticed everything about him now. The way his hair curled slightly when it was damp with sweat, the sound of his laugh when one of the barn cats did something amusing, the gentleness of his hands when he tended an injured calf. She found herself lingering over dinner preparations, wanting to make something special. She chose her dresses more carefully in the mornings, even though they were just going to get dirty and dusty. It was ridiculous. It was also undeniable. Quinn seemed unaware of her inner turmoil, treating her with the same respectful friendliness he always had. They had fallen into an easy partnership, anticipating each other's movements, communicating sometimes with just a glance. He made her laugh with stories from his drifting days, tales of eccentric ranchers and ornery cattle that reminded her of Joy's existence. One evening in mid-July, they were sitting on the porch after a particularly brutal day of moving the herd to fresh grazing. The air was still warm, carrying the scent of sage and dust. Quinn was whittling a piece of wood, his hands moving with casual skill, while Fiona mended a shirt that had torn on barbed wire. "Can I ask you something?" Quinn said, not looking up from his whittling. "Of course." "What made you decide to keep the ranch going?" After your husband died, I mean. Would have been easier to sell, move somewhere with less memories. Fiona considered the question, wanting to give him an honest answer. This place is all I have left of Thomas. Selling it would feel like erasing him, like admitting our life together did not matter. As long as the ranch stands, he is still here in a way. She paused, needle suspended over fabric. Does that sound foolish? No. Quinn set down his whittling, turning to face her. It sounds like love. The word hung between them, heavy with implications. Fiona felt her heart start to race, a response that had nothing to do with Thomas and everything to do with the man sitting beside her. I loved him, she said carefully. I still do, I think. But lately, I have been wondering if you can love someone who is gone and still be open to the living. Quinn held her gaze, and she saw something kindle in his eyes, hope mixed with caution. I think you can. I think love is not something that runs out. You just make more room for it. Is that experience talking? The question came out gentler than she intended, almost a whisper. No, he smiled slightly. That is hope talking. Hope that someone as remarkable as you might someday see me as more than just a hired hand. Fiona's breath caught. There it was, laid bare between them, the truth they had been dancing around for months. She should shut this down, maintain the boundaries that propriety demanded. Instead, she heard herself say, I already do. Quinn's expression transformed, joy breaking across his face like sunrise. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. His palm was warm and calloused, his grip gentle but sure. I know it has not been long since you lost your husband. I know I am younger, that people will talk. But Fiona, from the moment I rode up to this ranch, I felt like I was coming home. And it was not the land. It was you. Tears spilled down Fiona's cheeks, but they were not tears of grief. For the first time in 6 months, she was crying because she felt something other than pain. I feel guilty, she admitted. Like I am betraying Thomas by caring for you. Can I tell you what I think? Quinn squeezed her hand. I think your husband would want you to be happy. A man who loved you enough to build this ranch with you, who died defending what you made together, that is not a man who would want you to spend the rest of your life alone. You sound awfully certain about a man you never met. I know you. And the kind of woman you are, you would not have loved a man who was any less generous of spirit. Fiona laughed, a shaky sound caught between tears and joy. When did you get so wise? About 5 minutes ago. I am mostly improvising here. That made her laugh harder, and then Quinn was laughing too, and somehow they ended up standing, and then he was pulling her into his arms. She went willingly, pressing her face against his chest, feeling his heart beat strong and steady beneath her cheek. His arms came around her, secure and warm, and for the first time since Thomas died, Fiona felt safe. They stood like that until the stars came out, holding each other while the night settled around them. When they finally pulled apart, Quinn cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away the last of her tears. I will wait as long as you need, he said. No pressure, no expectations. Just know that I am here and I am not going anywhere. Fiona turned her head and kissed his palm, a gesture of gratitude and promise. Thank you for being patient with me. You are worth waiting for. They did not kiss that night. It felt too soon, too much. But they held hands as they said goodnight, and Fiona went to bed feeling something she had thought lost forever, hope for the future. The summer progressed, and so did their relationship. They were careful at first, mindful of both propriety and Fiona's grief. Quinn never pushed, content to follow her lead, and Fiona found herself gradually opening like a flower toward sun. They held hands while riding out to check on cattle. They sat closer on the porch in the evenings, shoulders touching, sharing warmth as the nights cooled. Quinn started joining her for breakfast in the house rather than taking his meals in the bunkhouse, and their mornings became precious times of quiet conversation over coffee and eggs. The people of Fort Garland noticed, of course. In a small town, nothing stayed secret for long. Most folks were supportive, happy to see Fiona emerging from her mourning. A few were less kind, whispering about indecent haste and cradle robbing. Fiona tried not to let the gossip bother her, but she was only human. She was coming out of the post office in early August when she ran into Clara Morrison, wife of the banker and the town's most enthusiastic gossip. Clara's eyes lit up when she saw Fiona, the way a cat's might when spotting a mouse. "Fiona, how lovely to see you. And how is that handsome young cowboy of yours? Quinn, is it? He is well, thank you." Fiona kept her voice neutral, trying to edge past. Clara moved to block her path, all false concern. It must be such a comfort having a strong young man around the ranch. Though I do worry what people might think, a widow and a bachelor living in such close quarters. Tongues will wag, you know. "Then let them wag," Fiona said, her patience snapping. "My husband is dead, Clara. I am running a ranch that requires help I cannot afford to be choosy about. If people want to make something ugly out of a decent man doing honest work, that says more about them than it does about me." She pushed past Clara and climbed onto her wagon, her hands shaking with anger and hurt. The drive back to the ranch gave her time to calm down, but the encounter had shaken her. Was she being foolish? Was she dishonoring Thomas's memory? She found Quinn in the barn, oiling tack. He looked up when she entered, his smile fading when he saw her expression. "What happened?" "Nothing." "Everything." Fiona slumped onto a hay bale, Clara Morrison being her usual charming self. Quinn set down the bridle he had been working on and came to sit beside her. "What did she say?" Fiona repeated the conversation, her voice tight with anger. When she finished, Quinn was quiet for a moment, his jaw set. "Do you want me to leave?" he asked finally. "If my being here is causing you trouble with the town, I can go. I do not want to make your life harder." "No." The vehemence of her response surprised them both. Fiona grabbed his hand, holding tight. "That is exactly what Clara and her ilk want, for me to be alone and miserable so they can feel superior. I will not give them that satisfaction." "What do you want?" Quinn asked gently. "Forget the town, forget what anyone else thinks. What do you want, Fiona?" She looked at him, this young man who had appeared in her life like an answer to a prayer she had not known how to voice. He had given her back her ranch, her purpose, and something more precious, the belief that she could still feel alive. "I want you to stay," she said. "I want to see where this goes between us, even if it is too soon, even if people talk. I want to stop being afraid of feeling happy again." Quinn raised her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "Then that is what we will do. Just like that, just like that." Fiona felt the last of the tension drain from her shoulders. "You make things seem so simple." "They are simple. Everything else is just noise." Quinn smiled at her, that open, honest smile that never failed to warm her from the inside out. "Now, want to help me finish this tack so we can get some dinner? I am starving. Always thinking about your stomach. I am a growing boy. You are 23 years old, you are done growing. Tell that to my appetite." Their easy banter restored her equilibrium, and by the time they walked up to the house for dinner, Fiona had pushed Clara Morrison firmly out of her mind. She had more important things to focus on, like the man beside her and the future they were carefully building together. That night after dinner, they were washing dishes together when Quinn suddenly took the plate from her hands and set it aside. "Dance with me," he said. "There is no music. Then we will make our own." He pulled her into his arms, one hand at her waist, the other holding hers, and began humming a slow waltz. Fiona laughed but followed his lead, and they moved around the small kitchen in a dance that was more shuffle than waltz but perfect in its own way. Quinn hummed louder, adding words here and there when he remembered them, and Fiona rested her head against his shoulder, letting him guide her. "Where did you learn to dance?" she asked. "My mother taught me, said even a cowboy should know how to treat a lady proper. She raised a good man." "I hope so." Quinn's arms tightened around her. "I am trying to be worthy of you. You already are." Fiona lifted her head to look at him, and the tenderness in his eyes took her breath away. "Quinn, I need to tell you something." "What is that?" "Thomas was a good man, and I loved him with everything I had. But knowing you, it has made me realize something. I was half alive even before he died. We were partners, friends, companions, but we never had this." She struggled to articulate what she felt. "This electricity. This feeling like my heart is too big for my chest. With Thomas, love was comfortable, steady. With you, it is like standing in a lightning storm." Quinn had stopped moving, his full attention on her words. "Is that good or bad?" "It is terrifying," Fiona admitted. "And it is wonderful. And I think I need to stop comparing, stop feeling guilty. You are not replacing Thomas. You are something entirely different, something I never knew I could have." "Fiona." Quinn cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs stroking her cheekbones. "Can I kiss you?" "I have been wanting to for months, but I did not want to rush you." In answer, she rose on her toes and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, both of them learning each other. Then Quinn made a sound low in his throat and deepened the kiss, and Fiona felt heat bloom through her body, a response she had not experienced in years, if ever. She gripped his shoulders, holding on as the world spun around her, and when they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. "Well," Fiona said, her voice shaky, "that was worth waiting for." Quinn laughed, then kissed her again and again like he could not get enough. They eventually made their way to the parlor, sinking onto the sofa in a tangle of limbs, kissing like teenagers even though they were grown adults who should know better. Quinn's hand stayed respectful, never straying to anywhere inappropriate, but the desire in his eyes when he looked at her made Fiona feel beautiful for the first time in years. "I should go," Quinn said eventually, though he made no move to leave. "Do not want to compromise your reputation more than I already have. Let them talk." Fiona kissed him once more, lingeringly. "But you are right, it is late. We have work tomorrow." They stood reluctantly, neither wanting to end the evening. At the door, Quinn paused. "Fiona, what happens now?" "Now," Fiona smiled, feeling lighter than she had in months. "Now we take it one day at a time. No rushing, no pressure, just us figuring things out together. I can live with that." Quinn kissed her forehead, sweet and chaste. "Good night, Fiona, sweet dreams." "Good night, Quinn." She watched him walk across the yard to the bunkhouse, his figure silhouetted by moonlight. When he reached the door, he turned and she waved back, grinning like a fool. Inside, the house felt less empty than it had in months, filled with possibility and hope. The rest of August passed in a haze of work and stolen moments. They were more open about their affection now, holding hands when they rode into town, sitting close during church services. The gossips gossiped, but more people were supportive than not, especially the women who remembered what it was like to be young and in love. Reverend James, a kindly older man who had presided over Thomas's funeral, pulled Fiona aside one Sunday after service. She braced herself for a lecture on propriety, but instead he surprised her. "Mrs. Evans, I wanted to tell you how pleased I am to see you happy again. Your young man seems quite devoted." "He is not officially my young man, Reverend," Fiona said, though the protest felt hollow even to her ears. Reverend James smiled gently. "My dear, I married you and Thomas 13 years ago. I saw the love you shared, and I grieved with you when you lost him. But Thomas would not have wanted you to bury yourself with him. Life is for the living, and there is no sin in finding joy again. Some people seem to think otherwise. Some people find comfort in judgment because their own lives are lacking. Pay them no mind. He patted her arm. You have my blessing if that matters. It does, Fiona said, surprised to find tears prickling her eyes. Thank you, Reverend. She shared the conversation with Quinn on the ride home, and he grinned. Nice to have the church on our side. That should shut up Clara Morrison. Nothing will shut up Clara Morrison short of the second coming. Then I guess we will just have to give her so much happiness to gossip about that she runs out of breath. Fiona laughed, and Quinn reached over to take her hand, keeping hold of it all the way back to the ranch. September brought the fall roundup, a week of brutal work gathering cattle from the mountain pastures before the weather turned. Quinn hired 2 temporary hands from town, young men he had befriended during his trips for supplies. Having extra help made the work manageable, and Fiona was impressed by how naturally Quinn took charge, directing operations with confidence and earning the respect of the other cowboys. On the last night of the roundup, they sat around the campfire, exhausted but satisfied. The herd was gathered, the count was good, and the ranch was positioned well for winter. Quinn sat beside Fiona, their shoulders touching, and she felt a profound sense of contentment. This was her life now. Hard work, good people, and the man beside her who had given her back her heart. That night, after the hired hands had rolled into their bedrolls, Quinn walked Fiona away from the camp to look at the stars. The sky was clear and vast, the Milky Way a river of light overhead. I love it out here, Quinn said quietly. The silence, the space. Makes you realize how small you are, but also how much possibility there is. Very philosophical for a cowboy. I have my moments. He turned to her, his expression serious in the starlight. Fiona, I know we have been taking things slow, and I respect that, but I need you to know something. I love you. I am in love with you. Have been for months, probably from the first time you smiled at me, and I am not going anywhere. I want to build a life with you if you will have me. Fiona's heart felt like it might burst. She had known her feelings were deep, but hearing Quinn voice his own love made it real in a way nothing else had. I love you too, she said, the words coming easily because they were true. You reminded me how to love again, Quinn. I thought that part of me died with Thomas, but you brought it back to life. Quinn pulled her into his arms, holding her tight, and they stood like that under the vast Colorado sky, 2 souls who had found each other against all odds. When he kissed her, it felt like a promise, a commitment to whatever came next. Will you marry me? Quinn whispered against her lips. I know it has not been a year yet, I know people will talk, but I do not want to waste any more time. I want to make this official, build a real future together. Fiona pulled back to look at him, searching his face in the starlight. He looked earnest and hopeful and so young, and she loved him with an intensity that scared and thrilled her. Yes, she said. Yes, I will marry you. Quinn let out a whoop of joy that probably woke the hired hands, then spun her in a circle, both of them laughing like children. When he set her down, he kissed her again, and again, like he could not quite believe she had said yes. We will do it right, he said when they finally came up for air. A proper courtship, however long you need. I just wanted to know you felt the same way. I feel the same way, Fiona assured him. But Quinn, there is something you need to understand. Marrying me means taking on this ranch, this life. It is hard work, uncertain income, no guarantees. Are you sure this is what you want, Fiona? Quinn took her face in his hands, his expression utterly sincere. This ranch, this life, this is everything I have been looking for, and more than that, you are everything I have been looking for. I am not scared of hard work. I am not scared of uncertainty. The only thing that scares me is losing you. "You will not lose me," she promised. "I am right here, and I am not going anywhere either." They made their way back to camp hand in hand, and that night Fiona fell asleep in her bedroll feeling like she was floating. Thomas would always be part of her history, a chapter she would never regret. But Quinn was her future, and for the first time since losing her husband, the future looked bright. They announced their engagement in early October, after waiting a month to let the initial excitement settle into certainty. The response in Fort Garland was mixed, but mostly positive. Reverend James agreed to marry them, suggesting they wait until after the first anniversary of Thomas's death to avoid scandal. Fiona agreed, even though it meant waiting another 2 months. She had waited this long for happiness. She could wait a bit longer to do things properly. The intervening weeks flew by in a flurry of preparation. Fiona sewed a new dress for the wedding, a simple but elegant blue gown that brought out her eyes. Quinn bought a new suit from the general store, enduring the fitting with good humor despite clearly being uncomfortable in such formal attire. They made plans for the future, where they would live, the ranch house, though Quinn wanted to add a room for children, how they would run the ranch as equal partners, what they hoped to build together. On a cold morning in mid-December, exactly 1 year and 1 week after Thomas Evans was laid to rest, Fiona Evans married Quinlan Davis in the small church at Fort Garland. The ceremony was simple, attended by a handful of friends and neighbors who genuinely wished them well. Martha Sullivan cried happy tears. Even Clara Morrison attended, though she sniffed disapprovingly throughout. When Reverend James pronounced them husband and wife, Quinn kissed Fiona with such tender joy that several women in the congregation sighed audibly. Walking back down the aisle hand in hand, Fiona felt Thomas's presence not as a shadow or a weight, but as a blessing, a gentle approval from wherever his spirit had gone. She had honored his memory by fighting for the ranch. Now she was honoring his love by letting herself love again. The reception was held at Martha's house, a modest affair with cake and punch and well wishes. Quinn never left Fiona's side, his hand always at the small of her back or holding hers, like he needed constant physical confirmation that she was real and his. As the afternoon waned, they said their goodbyes and rode back to the ranch, ready to begin their life together properly. That night, in the bedroom Fiona had shared with Thomas, but which was now being transformed into something new, she and Quinn came together with a tenderness and passion that spoke of love long denied. He was gentle with her, patient, and when they finally joined as husband and wife, Fiona felt complete in a way she had forgotten was possible. Afterward, they lay tangled together, Quinn's hand tracing lazy patterns on her bare skin. "Happy?" he asked, pressing a kiss to her shoulder. "Happier than I thought I could be again," Fiona admitted. "Thank you for being so patient with me. You were worth every minute of waiting." Quinn propped himself up on one elbow, looking down at her with such love that it made her breath catch. "I promise to spend every day proving I am worthy of you. You already are." Fiona pulled him down for a kiss. "We are worthy of each other. That is enough." They made love again, slower this time, learning each other's bodies with the knowledge that they had a lifetime to perfect the dance. When they finally fell asleep, Fiona tucked against Quinn's chest. She felt at peace for the first time in over a year. The winter was harsh that year, with heavy snows that kept them close to the house for weeks at a time. But the isolation did not feel like confinement. Quinn and Fiona spent the long evenings reading to each other, playing cards, making plans for spring improvements. They learned each other's habits and quirks, the small intimacies of married life that build true partnership. Quinn had a terrible sense of direction inside the house, constantly forgetting where things were kept. Fiona discovered he could not cook to save his life but was excellent at washing dishes. They established routines. Quinn would handle the morning chores while Fiona made breakfast, then they would tackle the day's work together. In the evenings, Fiona would sew or mend while Quinn carved small wooden figures, a hobby he had picked up as a boy. The house filled with his creations: horses, cattle, even a little wooden figure of Fiona that he set on the mantelpiece, a permanent reminder of his devotion. In February, Fiona realized she had missed her monthly cycle. By March, there was no denying the signs. She was pregnant. The realization brought a complex swirl of emotions: joy at the life growing inside her, fear of the dangers of childbirth, and a pang of sadness that this child would be Quinn's, not Thomas's. She struggled with how to tell Quinn, wanting to share her happiness but worried about revealing her complicated feelings. She found her moment on a bright March morning when the first hints of spring were breaking through the snow. They were in the barn, and Quinn was singing while mucking out stalls, off-key but enthusiastic. Fiona stood in the doorway, watching him with a smile, and decided to just say it. "Quinn, I am pregnant." He froze mid-shovel, then slowly turned to face her. "You are sure?" "As sure as I can be without seeing a doctor." The shovel clattered to the ground, and then Quinn was across the barn, sweeping her up in his arms and spinning her around. "We are having a baby. Fiona, we are having a baby." His joy was infectious, sweeping away her complicated emotions in the face of his pure, uncomplicated happiness. When he set her down, there were tears streaming down his face. "I am going to be a father," he said, wonder in his voice. "I cannot believe it. I am going to be a father." "You are going to be a wonderful father," Fiona assured him, her own tears starting to fall. "This baby is so lucky to have you." Quinn dropped to his knees and pressed his ear to her still flat stomach, as if he could hear the tiny heartbeat growing inside. "Hello in there," he said softly. "I am your papa and I love you already. And your mama is the most amazing woman in the world, so you better appreciate her." Fiona laughed through her tears, running her fingers through Quinn's hair. This was right. This was good. Thomas would always be part of her past, but this child was her future, hers and Quinn's, a new beginning for the ranch and their family. The pregnancy progressed smoothly, though Fiona found the summer heat more oppressive than usual. Quinn became almost comically protective, trying to prevent her from doing any heavy work. They argued about it regularly, Fiona insisting she was pregnant, not fragile, Quinn convinced she needed to rest more. They eventually compromised, Fiona doing lighter chores while Quinn handled the heavy labor with help from a seasonal hand they hired for the summer. In late September, as the aspen leaves turned gold in the mountains, Fiona went into labor. Doc Wilson, the aging physician who served Fort Garland and the surrounding ranches, arrived in time to oversee the birth. Quinn paced outside the bedroom like a caged animal, and Fiona could hear him muttering prayers between her contractions. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Fiona feared neither she nor the baby would survive. But as dawn broke on September 26, 1879, she gave one final push and heard the angry wail of her newborn son. Doc Wilson placed the squalling, red-faced baby on her chest, and Fiona looked into her son's tiny face and fell completely in love. Quinn burst into the room moments later. Doc Wilson's prohibition against anxious fathers be damned. "Fiona, are you all right? Is the baby okay?" "We are fine." Fiona smiled tiredly up at her husband. "Come meet your son." Quinn approached the bed with reverent steps, his eyes wide as he looked at the tiny bundle in Fiona's arms. "A son," he breathed. "We have a son. We do." Fiona shifted so Quinn could see the baby better. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names during the pregnancy but never settled on anything definite. Now, looking at their child's face, Quinn said, "Thomas. I want to name him Thomas after your first husband. He was part of building this ranch, part of making you who you are. Our son should carry that legacy." Fiona's heart swelled with love for this man who understood so instinctively what she needed. "Thomas Quinn Davis," she said. "So he carries both of you. Perfect." Quinn leaned down to kiss her forehead, then tentatively touched his son's tiny hand. The baby's fingers immediately wrapped around Quinn's finger, and the look of wonder on her husband's face was something Fiona would remember forever. "Hello, Thomas. Welcome to the world, little man." Doc Wilson cleared his throat. "All right, Papa, let your wife rest. She has had a hard night. You can come back in a few hours." Quinn kissed Fiona once more, whispered, "I love you so much," and reluctantly left. Fiona settled back against the pillows, her son nursing contentedly at her breast, and felt a bone-deep satisfaction. This was her family now. This was her life. And it was everything she had needed without knowing to want it. Little Thomas proved to be a good baby, healthy and strong-lunged. Quinn was a devoted father from the first moment, changing diapers without complaint, walking the floor with a colicky infant at 3 in the morning, singing the same terrible off-key lullabies that somehow always soothed the baby. Watching him with their son, Fiona fell even more deeply in love with her husband, if such a thing was possible. The ranch continued to prosper. Word had spread about Quinn's skill and work ethic, and other ranchers occasionally sought his advice on cattle management or land use. He handled the attention with his usual modesty, always crediting Fiona as his partner and teacher. The truth was they had learned from each other, their different strengths complementing perfectly. By the time Thomas was 2, toddling around the ranch yard and trying to climb everything in sight, Fiona was pregnant again. This time she recognized the signs immediately and told Quinn over breakfast one morning in early spring of 1881. Again, Quinn's face split into a huge grin. "Really? Really?" Fiona sipped her tea, smiling at his reaction. "Think you can handle 2 little ones? I can handle a dozen if they are all as wonderful as Thomas." Quinn came around the table to kiss her. "You make beautiful babies, Mrs. Davis." "We make beautiful babies," she corrected. Their daughter was born in November, a tiny thing with Quinn's gray eyes and a surprisingly loud cry for someone so small. They named her Eleanor Rose, and she had her father wrapped around her little finger from the first moment. Thomas, now a big brother at 2 years old, was fascinated by the baby and wanted to help with everything, often creating more work than he saved, but doing so with such earnest enthusiasm that no one could scold him. The years flowed by, marked by the rhythms of ranch life and the milestones of their children. Thomas grew into a sturdy boy with his mother's practical nature and his father's easy way with animals. Eleanor proved to be fearless, climbing fences and chasing chickens before she could properly walk. In 1883, another son arrived, Patrick James, named for both their fathers. In 1885, a third boy, Michael John, rounded out their family. The ranch house expanded with their family, Quinn adding rooms with the help of neighbors during barn raisings that had become social events. The original structure that Fiona and Thomas had built was now the heart of a larger home, filled with the noise and chaos of 4 children, and the love of parents who had found each other through grief and grown something beautiful from it. Fort Garland grew too, the town evolving from rough frontier settlement to established community. The railroad reached nearby Alamosa, making it easier to ship cattle to market. Modern conveniences slowly filtered into their lives. Better tools, manufactured goods from back east, Even newspapers that arrived only a week old rather than months. Through it all, Quinn and Fiona remained devoted partners. They still worked side by side during busy seasons, still sat on the porch in the evenings watching the sun set over the mountains. The passion of their early days had settled into something deeper and more enduring, a love built on shared experience and unwavering commitment. On a warm evening in June 1890, 12 years after Quinn first rode up to the ranch seeking work, they sat on that same porch watching their children play in the yard. Thomas was 16 now, already doing a man's work on the ranch. Eleanor, at 9, was organizing her younger brothers into some elaborate game that involved sticks and a lot of dramatic dying. Patrick and Michael, 7 and 5, played along with the exaggerated enthusiasm of little boys. "Hard to believe this is our life," Quinn said, his hand finding Fiona's. Even after all these years, he still sought her touch, that physical connection that grounded them both. "Sometimes I have to pinch myself," Fiona admitted. She was 44 now, her dark hair showing threads of silver, her face lined by sun and laughter. She had never felt more beautiful because she knew Quinn saw her through eyes of love. "I thought I was done with happiness when Thomas died. I thought I would just exist until my time came. I am glad you were wrong." Quinn brought her hand to his lips, a gesture he had repeated thousands of times over the years and which never failed to make her smile. "I am glad you rode up to my ranch that day, a cocky young cowboy looking for work." "I was not cocky. I was confident. You were barely more than a boy." "I was 23, hardly a child. You had a baby face. You thought I was handsome." "I thought you were useful, liar." They grinned at each other, still capable of teasing after all these years. This was what Fiona had never had with Thomas, this playfulness, this ability to be both partners and lovers, friends and spouses. She had loved Thomas truly, and his death had devastated her. But Quinn had taught her that hearts can heal, that love does not run out, that there is room for joy even after profound loss. "Mama, Papa," Eleanor came running up, her braids flying behind her. "Thomas says I cannot help with the branding next week because I am a girl. Tell him I can." Fiona looked at Quinn, who shrugged. "Your mother was branding cattle before I got here," he told Eleanor. "If she says you are ready, you are ready." "But she is only 9, Thomas protested, following his sister. "It is dangerous work." "You were helping by 9, Fiona pointed out. "That is different. I am a boy." "Oh, here we go," Quinn muttered, but he was smiling. This was a regular argument in the Davis household. Fiona stood and faced her oldest son, hands on hips. "Thomas Quinn Davis, I run this ranch as much as your father does. Your sister is going to learn the same skills you did at the same age. Being a girl does not make her less capable." Thomas had the grace to look abashed. "Yes, Mama. Sorry, Ellie. It is okay." Eleanor punched her brother's arm with more force than necessary. "I know you are just trying to protect me, but I can protect myself." "That you can," Quinn agreed. "Now, who wants to help me feed the chickens before supper?" All 4 children immediately volunteered, even though feeding chickens was a chore they usually tried to avoid. They loved any excuse to spend time with their father, and Quinn never seemed to tire of their company. He headed toward the chicken coop with his small army in tow, Patrick and Michael each claiming one of his hands, Thomas and Eleanor ranging ahead. Fiona watched them go, her heart so full she thought it might burst. This was her legacy. Not just the ranch, though that mattered, but this family, these children who were being raised with love and respect and the knowledge that they were valued. Quinn had given her that, the chance to build something new from the ruins of her first life. She thought of Thomas Evans sometimes, her first love, the man who had built this ranch with her and died defending it. She thought he would approve of what his widow had done, how she had honored their shared dream by not letting it die with him. And she thought he would like Quinn, would appreciate the way the younger man had loved Thomas's widow with such devotion and care. "Thank you," she whispered to the mountain breeze, to the spirit of the man she had loved first. "Thank you for sharing your dream with me. I will never forget you." The breeze whispered back through the aspens, and Fiona took it as the blessing it was. Then she headed toward the chicken coop to join her family, ready for whatever the evening would bring. The years continued to be kind to the Davis family. The ranch prospered, benefiting from good management and the expansion of the cattle market as the West became less wild and more settled. Thomas grew into a fine young man, taking on more responsibility and showing every sign of being ready to inherit the ranch someday. Eleanor's fearless nature was tempered by good sense, making her an invaluable hand during busy seasons. Patrick showed an unexpected talent for handling horses, able to calm even the most skittish animals. Michael, the baby, was the dreamer of the family, always asking questions about the world beyond Colorado. In 1892, Thomas announced his intention to marry Sarah Mitchell, daughter of a neighboring rancher. The wedding was held in the same church where Fiona and Quinn had married, and Fiona cried throughout the ceremony, overwhelmed by the passage of time and the joy of seeing her oldest child begin his own life. Quinn held her hand and whispered, "He learned from the best how to be a good husband." "We both taught him," Fiona corrected. "Yes, we did." Thomas and Sarah built a small house on the far edge of the ranch property, and the arrival of grandchildren began in 1893. Fiona became a grandmother at 47, holding her first grandchild, a boy they named Daniel, and feeling the circle of life complete itself in ways both joyful and bittersweet. Quinn, now 40, was still the same enthusiastic, hard-working man who had ridden up to her porch 14 years earlier. He had aged well, his face weathered by sun and wind, but his eyes still bright with the love he carried for her. Their physical relationship had not dimmed with time. If anything, it had deepened, the comfort of familiarity enhanced by genuine passion that flared bright in unexpected moments. One evening, after putting the younger children to bed and knowing Thomas was occupied with his own family, Quinn pulled Fiona into a slow dance in their bedroom, humming the same tune he had that night in the kitchen so many years ago. "What has gotten into you?" Fiona asked, but she was smiling. "Just feeling grateful," Quinn said, holding her close. "Grateful for you, for our family, for this life we built together. We have been lucky. We have been more than lucky. We found each other when we both needed saving. You gave me a home, a purpose, a family. And I hope I gave you something too." "You gave me everything," Fiona said, looking up at him with tears in her eyes. "You reminded me how to love again, Quinn. After Thomas died, I thought that part of me was buried with him. But you showed me that hearts can heal, that there is always room for more love, that joy can grow even in grief's shadow." Quinn kissed her then, tender and deep, and they made love with the comfortable passion of long-married couples who still desired each other fiercely. Afterward, lying tangled together in the darkness, Fiona felt the same completeness she had felt on their wedding night, amplified by years of shared experience. "I love you," she whispered. "More today than yesterday, less than tomorrow." "That is stolen from a poem," Quinn accused, but his voice was rough with emotion. "Does not make it less true." He held her tighter, his face pressed against her hair, and Fiona felt him shake slightly. "What is wrong?" she asked, pulling back to see his face. "Nothing. Everything is right." "That is the problem." Quinn smiled through tears. "I am so happy, and sometimes it scares me, like if I am too happy something will come and take it all away." "Nothing is going to take this away," Fiona said firmly. "We built this life on rock, not sand. It will endure. Promise. I promise." They fell asleep wrapped around each other. Two people who had found in each other exactly what they needed, exactly when they needed it. The turn of the century brought changes to Fort Garland and the surrounding territories. Colorado had been a state since 1876, and the wildness of the frontier was increasingly a memory rather than a reality. Electricity reached some of the larger towns, though the Davis Ranch still relied on oil lamps. Automobiles began to appear, strange clattering machines that spooked the horses but fascinated the children. Through it all, the ranch remained a constant, a piece of the Old West preserved through hard work and dedication. Quinn and Fiona adapted to changes when it made sense, but held firm to the values that had always guided them. Honest work, fair dealing, respect for the land and animals in their care. Eleanor married in 1898, choosing a teacher from town who was willing to live on a ranch despite his city upbringing. Patrick followed in 1900, wedding a girl from Alamosa whom he had met at a horse auction. Michael, the dreamer, announced his intention to go to college in Denver, wanting to study agriculture and bring modern techniques back to the ranch. Fiona and Quinn supported all their children's choices, proud of the individuals they had become. By 1905, the ranch that Fiona and Thomas Evans had started 27 years earlier had become a thriving multi-generational operation. Thomas and Sarah had 3 children and managed the day-to-day cattle operations. Eleanor and her husband ran a small horse breeding program on their portion of the property. Patrick had opened a breaking and training stable that served ranchers throughout the San Luis Valley. Michael was finishing college and planning to return home with new ideas for improving yields and breeding programs. Fiona, now 59, had stepped back from the heavy physical labor, but remained deeply involved in the ranch's management. She handled the books, maintained relationships with buyers, and served as the matriarch whose word was final in family disputes. Quinn, at 53, was still active in the daily work, though he left the more strenuous tasks to younger men. They sat on their porch one evening in late summer, the same spot where they had spent countless evenings over the past 27 years. The view had not changed much. The mountains still rose majestically to the west, the grass still rippled in the breeze, the cattle still grazed peacefully in the distance. But everything else had transformed beyond recognition. "Hard to believe I rode up to this house 27 years ago with nothing but a horse and a prayer," Quinn mused. "Best day of my life," Fiona said. "Well, second best. Our wedding was the actual best. Better than when the children were born, different kind of best." "All my bests involve you, though." Quinn laughed and pulled her close, his arm around her shoulders in the easy affection that had always characterized their relationship. "We did all right, did we not? We did more than all right. We built something lasting." Fiona gestured to the ranch spread out before them. "This will go on long after we are gone, our children, their children, all carrying forward what we started." "What Thomas started," Quinn corrected gently. "I just helped you keep it going." "No." Fiona turned to face him. "Thomas and I built the foundation, that is true. But you and I built the house, filled it with love and children and all the things that make a place a home. This is our legacy as much as it was his." Quinn kissed her temple. "I love you, Fiona Davis. Have since the moment you hired a saddle tramp cowboy against your better judgment. Marrying you was the best judgment I ever exercised," Fiona said. "You reminded me how to live again, Quinn. Not just love, though you did that too. You reminded me that grief does not have to be the end of the story, that there are second acts and new beginnings, that life goes on and we can choose to go with it. Wise woman. I had a good teacher. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold and deep purple. From the various houses dotting the ranch property, they could hear the sounds of their extended family. Children laughing, voices calling, dogs barking, all the noise of a life well lived. No regrets, Quinn asked quietly. Not a single one, Fiona said. You? Only that I did not find you sooner. We found each other exactly when we were supposed to, Fiona said with certainty. Any sooner and I would not have been ready, any later and I might have given up. It was perfect timing. Quinn stood and offered his hand. Dance with me. There is no music. There never is. We always make our own. Fiona took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. They swayed together on the porch in the gathering darkness, Quinn humming that same waltz he had hummed so many years ago in the kitchen, both of them older and grayer but no less in love. This was their story. A widow and a cowboy who found each other in grief and built something beautiful from it. A love that defied age and circumstance, that grew deeper with every passing year, that would endure long after they were gone in the children and grandchildren who carried their legacy forward. When the stars came out, they were still dancing, two souls who had found their perfect match and built a life that honored both past and future. And if the mountain breeze carried whispers of blessing from a man long dead who had loved Fiona first, well, that was just the Wild West taking care of its own, making sure love, in all its forms, was never wasted but always celebrated and remembered. The seasons turned as they always had and always would. Winter brought snow that blanketed the ranch in white silence. Spring brought calving and new growth. Summer brought long days of work under burning sun, and fall brought the satisfaction of gathering in the fruits of their labor. Through it all, Fiona and Quinn faced each challenge together, their partnership as strong in their 60s as it had been in their 30s. In 1910, they celebrated 32 years since Quinn first rode up to the ranch, 28 years since their wedding. The family threw a party, all their children and grandchildren gathering at the main house for a celebration that lasted into the night. There were speeches and toasts, laughter and tears, stories told and retold about the building of the ranch and the family. Thomas, now 31 and the father of 5, raised his glass. To my mother, who showed us all what strength looks like, and to my stepfather, who taught me that love is not about blood but about showing up every day and doing the work. To Quinn, Patrick added, the best father a man could ask for, even if he came into the job halfway through. Eleanor stood, her own 2 children at her side. To my parents, both of them, who built something lasting and taught us the value of family, hard work, and never giving up on love. Michael, back from his studies and now implementing modern ranching techniques that were improving yields across the property, concluded the toasts. To second chances and new beginnings. May we all be as brave as our parents in building the lives we want rather than accepting the lives we are given. Fiona cried through all of it, happy tears that Quinn gently wiped away with his thumbs. When the speeches ended and the party resumed, he pulled her outside onto the porch, away from the noise and celebration. Too much? He asked, concern in his eyes. No, it is perfect. They are perfect. We are so lucky, Quinn. We are not lucky. We worked for this. We chose this every day in 1,000 small ways. That is not luck. That is commitment. Fiona cupped his face in her hands, seeing the lines time had etched around his eyes and mouth, the silver that now dominated his dark hair, the slight stoop in his shoulders from years of hard work. He was still the most beautiful man she had ever seen. I love you so much. Thank you for not giving up on me when I was lost. You were never lost. You were just waiting to be found." Quinn kissed her, sweet and lingering. "And I will find you again in every life if such a thing is possible." "It is possible," Fiona said with certainty. "Love like ours does not end, it just transforms." They stood together under the stars, holding each other as they had so many times before, while inside their house, their family celebrated the life they had built. The ranch stretched out around them, prosperous and enduring, a testament to what two people could accomplish when they worked together toward a common goal. Years continued to pass, marked by the graduations and weddings of grandchildren, the arrival of great-grandchildren, the slow but inevitable advance of age. Quinn's hair went completely white, and he developed a limp from an old injury that had never quite healed right. Fiona's hands became gnarled with arthritis, making the fine sewing she had once excelled at difficult. But they had each other. Every morning, Quinn brought Fiona coffee in bed, a ritual he had started in their first year of marriage and never stopped. Every evening they sat together on the porch, watching the sunset and discussing the day. They argued sometimes, passionate disagreements about ranch management or how to handle problems with the children, but they always made up before bed, neither willing to let the sun set on anger. On a cool morning in October 1918, Fiona woke to find Quinn had not gotten up to do chores. He lay beside her, his breathing shallow, his face gray. She called for help, and by noon Doc Wilson, now ancient himself but still practicing, had confirmed what Fiona already knew in her heart. Quinn's heart was failing, had probably been failing for months, though he had hidden the symptoms, not wanting to worry her. "How long?" she asked, her voice steady though her world was crumbling. "Days, maybe a week," Doc Wilson said gently. "I am sorry, Fiona, there is nothing to be done." The children gathered, all of them and their families, filling the house with the presence and love of the family Quinn and Fiona had built together. They took turns sitting with Quinn, saying their goodbyes, thanking him for being the father they needed. But mostly they left him alone with Fiona, recognizing that this was a private sorrow that belonged to the two of them. On the third day, as afternoon light slanted through the bedroom window, Quinn opened his eyes and smiled at Fiona. "Still here," he whispered. "Still here," she confirmed, holding his hand in both of hers. "Always." "Do not grieve too long," Quinn said, each word an effort. "Live, Fiona. You taught me that, now I am teaching you. Live and be happy. Our story does not end just because I am leaving. It goes on in our children, in this ranch, in every sunset you watch from our porch. I cannot do this without you. You can. You did it before, you will do it again. You are the strongest person I know." Quinn squeezed her hand weakly. "Thank you for taking a chance on a young cowboy with nothing but hope and a willingness to work. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for letting me love you. You saved me," Fiona said through her tears. "You reminded me how to love again, how to live again. I would not have survived without you." "Yes, you would have, but I am glad you did not have to." Quinn's eyes drifted closed, opened again with effort. "Not gone yet, just resting." "Rest then, I am here, I will always be here." He slept, woke, slept again. The family tiptoed in and out, providing meals Fiona did not eat, offering comfort she could not accept. As evening fell, Quinn stirred and looked at Fiona with sudden clarity. "Tell me again," he said. "The day we met." So Fiona told the story, her voice soft in the darkening room. She described how he had ridden up, young and hopeful, asking for work. How she had been desperate enough to take a chance on a stranger. How he had proven himself day after day, week after week, until she could not imagine the ranch without him. How friendship had become something more, how love had crept up on her like sunrise, gradual and then all at once. "And you proposed under the stars," she said, "during the fall roundup. You said you loved me and wanted to build a life together." "Best decision I ever made," Quinn whispered. "Marrying you. We had a good life, Quinn, a really good life. The best." His breathing grew more labored, his grip on her hand loosening. "Love you, Fiona, forever. Love you too, forever and always." Quinn smiled, that same transforming smile that had made her fall in love with him 40 years ago. Then he closed his eyes, took one more breath, and was gone. Fiona sat holding his hand as the room darkened, as the stars came out one by one in the window, as the family gathered outside the door waiting for permission to enter. She sat and remembered. The young man who had ridden into her life when she needed him most, who had loved her with patience and devotion, who had given her 4 children and 40 years of partnership, who had reminded her that life goes on and love is always worth the risk. "Thank you," she whispered to the silent room. "Thank you for everything." Then she stood, kissed her husband's forehead one last time, and opened the door to let in their children and face whatever came next. The funeral was held on a brilliant October day, the aspens turning gold in the mountains, the sky impossibly blue. Quinn was buried on a hill overlooking the ranch, a spot he had always loved, next to a plot Fiona had designated for herself when her time came. The service was attended by what seemed like half of southern Colorado, ranchers and townsfolk who had known and respected Quinn for his fairness, his hard work, and his devotion to family. Reverend James, ancient now but still presiding over Fort Garland's church, spoke about love that transcends death, about building legacies that outlast our time on earth. Quinlan Davis came to this valley with nothing but hope and left it richer for his presence. He built a family, a ranch, a life that will continue long after he is gone. That is the truest form of immortality. After the funeral, after the gathering at the house, after the last of the mourners had left, Fiona stood on the porch and looked out at the ranch. She was 72 years old, had buried 2 husbands, and felt ancient beyond her years. But she was still here, still breathing, and as Quinn had reminded her in his last hours, the story was not over just because one chapter had ended. She lived for 7 more years, long enough to see great-great-grandchildren born, long enough to witness the ranch survive a devastating drought and emerge stronger, long enough to know that what she and Quinn had built would endure. Thomas took over full management, with his siblings as partners, and the ranch continued to thrive under their combined efforts. In the spring of 1925, Fiona felt a sudden pain in her chest while working in her garden. She made it to the porch, sat in the rocking chair where she and Quinn had spent so many evenings, and looked out at the mountains one last time. Her vision was fading, her breath coming in gasps, but she felt no fear. She was going to join Quinn and Thomas before him, and that felt right. As the world dimmed, she thought she heard music, the tune Quinn used to hum while they danced in the kitchen. She thought she felt strong arms lifting her, young arms like Quinn had when they first met, and a voice whispered in her ear, "I found you again." Fiona smiled and let go, knowing that love in all its forms never truly ends. It just transforms, moving from one phase to another, eternal and unchanging in its essence even as its expression evolves. They found her there, peaceful in her chair, a smile on her face. And when they buried her next to Quinn on the hill overlooking the ranch, it felt less like an ending and more like a completion. 2 halves of one whole finally reunited. The ranch continued, as Fiona had known it would. The Davis family expanded over the generations, branching out but always maintaining their connection to the original land. The main house was eventually added to the National Register of Historic Places, recognized as an example of early Colorado ranching and the strong women who helped build the West. Visitors could stand on that porch and look out at the same view Fiona and Quinn had loved, could see the mountains rising majestically, could feel the wind that still whispered through the aspens. And if they listened carefully, on quiet evenings when the sunset painted the sky in gold and purple, they might hear the echo of laughter, the ghost of a waltz hummed off-key, the eternal song of two souls who found each other in the wild Colorado territory and built a love that outlasted death itself. That was the legacy of Fiona and Quinlan Davis. Not just a successful ranch, though they built that too, but a love story that proved hearts can heal, that second chances are real, that life always offers another beginning if we are brave enough to take it. Fiona had loved Thomas Evans truly and mourned him deeply. But Quinn Davis had reminded her that mourning is not the same as dying, that love does not run out but multiplies, that there is always room for more joy even in grief's shadow. And in the end, that was the greatest lesson. Love in all its forms is the point. Building it, nurturing it, protecting it, passing it on to the next generation. The work is hard, the challenges are real, but the reward is a life well lived and a legacy that endures long after we are gone. That is what Fiona and Quinn built together in the wild Colorado territory, and that is what their descendants carried forward for generations to come. The ranch stood for over 100 years as a working operation, before finally being preserved as a historical site in the 1990s. But even then, the great-great-great-grandchildren of Fiona and Quinn maintained connections to the land, returning for reunions, sharing stories of the strong-willed widow and the young cowboy who fell in love while building a life from scratch in the untamed West. And always, the mountains watched over it all, eternal and unchanging, guardians of love stories like Fiona and Quinn's that proved the human heart's capacity for resilience, hope, and the courage to love again even after devastating loss. Their story became part of the landscape, as enduring as the aspens that turned gold each fall, as constant as the stars that wheeled overhead, as permanent as the love that had built a family, a ranch, and a legacy that would outlast them all. The end.